all you have to do is embrace the vision.
What's good, Vision Gang? You already know what it is. This is your boy DaVizion, and I'm back again with another MMA reaction. Today, I'm reacting to Gavia, America's most savage CEO, Dana White. Dana White, the illustrious CEO of the UFC, one of the most famous men in America, probably in the world. Has some controversy surrounding him every once in a while. Definitely not a boring CEO. I really don't know all that much about him, just a little bit. I'm hoping this video really outlines why exactly Dana is not only one of the most savage CEOs in MMA, but in the UFC. I know there has been some controversy about the way he books, about the drug testing, about the whole way the UFC is ran, and I'm hoping Patrick really outlines all that. You guys, if you haven't already done so, make sure you guys subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell if you're really liking the videos. Make sure you guys jab that like button and send this video to the moon, and let's go ahead and get this thing started, y'all.
When you hear the words visionary and multi-billion-dollar empire, who comes to mind? But what if I tell you that the most overlooked entrepreneur of our generation might be this guy?
I don't give a fuck.
In the last 20 years, Dana White turned a bankrupt company into one of the biggest sports promotion in the world.
And everybody's like, wow, that's the greatest investment in the history of mankind. Well, let me tell you the rest of the story.
And you don't accomplish that without making a few enemies.
There's plenty of people that would like to assault me. Get in line.
Some of them coming from unexpected places.
He's not a good person. He seems to have lost his character somewhere along the way.
Oh, wow. His own mama.
A few powerful men operate away from the spotlight, turning what was once an illegal operation into the fastest growing sport of our generation.
Someday, everyone will talk about the UFC.
This is the sport of the future.
Between political disasters, drug scandals, and encounters with the mafia, if the rise of the UFC from its ashes isn't one of America's greatest success stories,
I cannot wait to find out.
The most controversial one. Starts when the UFC is dying at UFC 27.
Okay.
It was nothing that what we expected. There was no energy in the crowd. We walk in the arena, 1/16 full. There's nobody there. I wanted to buy a program. They didn't have a program. I want to buy a t-shirt. You can buy a t-shirt.
This man looks calm and collected, but don't let it fool you. He's a straight up business savage. The name is Lorenzo Fertitta.
And if you really know the history of the Fertittas and what they've built and what they've done, incredible businessmen. He and his brother Frank Fertitta own Station Casinos, which is the third or fourth largest gaming company in the country.
So I'm sitting at the fight with Dana and I'm going,
imagine if they did this and imagine if they did that. This thing could be big.
Either there's something really wrong with us or this business just isn't being run the right way.
And you can blame it on these guys. Rorion Gracie, Art Davie, and Bob Merowitz founded the UFC in 1993 under Semaphore Entertainment Group.
Semaphore Entertainment.
There was a quote from TV Guide after the first UFC. This is the bloodiest, most brutal spectacle in the history of mankind.
It was one of those things you kind of wanted to watch, but didn't know if you should be.
It was basically old marketing by the old owners just to make it sound crazy.
If SEG made one key mistake, it was pissing off the wrong American hero.
Well, eventually Senator John McCain stepped in.
What it was at the beginning was human cockfighting. It was. I mean, I've seen people repeatedly getting smashed in the face with a guy sitting on top of them. That's not a sport.
He said, what are you doing? You can't go put on fights that aren't regulated by the Athletic Commission.
There was no referee. There was nothing. It was terrible.
The owner basically said, trust me when I say this. I've been in business for a long time. You can't mess with the government. Tell the government you're not going to do what they want you to do. See what happens.
McCain needs a campaign
be shut down
to
so
ban the
quick.
UFC across the U.S. He pressures cable companies to stop showing UFC events.
John McCain to ban Ultimate Fighting, taking it too far.
When that happens, Gracie and Davie ditch SEG, leaving Bob Merowitz alone at the helm of the UFC.
So now, the cable companies wouldn't put them on pay-per-view. The ATM machine was cut off.
Check this out.
Correct.
Those are the revenues of the UFC per event from UFC 1 to UFC 27.
Shit, it's just a downward spiral.
The two guys who would end up saving his ass were sitting right there at UFC 27. And one of them prepared his entire life for that moment.
I had a hardcore upbringing, you know. I was the broke kid. My dad was an alcoholic and was never around, and when he did show up, you didn't want him around. You know what I mean? You know, I come from a single mom who worked hard and didn't have a lot of money. So me and my sister were home a lot alone. One of the things I think about growing up alone is, you know, there's a lot of stuff that you have to learn on your own.
He just had this great personality. People were attracted to him. They wanted to be his friend. They like hanging out with him.
You went to school with Lorenzo, your partner now.
Me and Dana go way back to the time we were like 14, 15 years old. Knew each other all through high school.
I got kicked out of high school a bunch of times. I was just never a school guy.
I mean, Dana has a high school education and that's it.
I was a bouncer. I did paving. I worked at the Four Seasons as a bellman. My mother used to tell me that I was going to be just like my father and not amount to anything. And I was going to be pumping gas into my friends' cars. You know, my mom did a lot of shit like that. And I'm not saying that that's what drove me, but that didn't hurt. I always knew I wanted to be in the fight business.
Half the battle in life is figuring out who you are and what you want to do for the rest of it.
I was literally standing in the lobby one day, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? And I walked out the front door, and one of my good friends, who was the doorman, says, what are you doing? I said, I'm quitting. He's like, what? What are you going to do? I said, I want to be in the fight business. He said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
After high school, you know, kind of parted, went our own ways. I went off to college. He went off and did what he did in Boston.
Dana moves from Vegas to Boston, where he starts teaching boxing.
So I was involved in boxing.
Teaching boxing.
I had boxing gyms.
And it doesn't take long before trouble finds him.
One day I'm actually in there teaching a class, and these guys literally walk right into the middle of the class. And they're like, hey, we need to talk to you. And I said, I'm teaching a class here. And they're like, we need to talk to you outside. They start asking me if I know who they are, and I don't.
When he walks down the street, the sidewalk shook. We're talking about the notorious mobster James Whitey Bulger.
He was the inspiration for Jack Nicholson's character in the movie The Departed.
Heavy lies the crown. Sort of thing.
Johnny Depp also played him in Black Mass.
The last thing I would do if I was planning to harm you is to warn you in advance, you dumb.
Give me 3 words that describe Whitey Bulger.
Stone cold killer.
That's Southie, where he did most of his crime. He murdered people there, he buried people there, and he went to sleep there.
Whitey Bulger had a guy who worked under him, and his name was Kevin Weeks. Yeah, they wanted $2,500 from me. 21 years old, you might as well ask me for $25,000. Right. I didn't have $2,500.
What do you do?
I ignored him. I didn't do anything. You know, I tried to avoid him for a while, and you can only avoid that shit for so long. And months went by, and one day I got a call at my apartment. The guy's like, you got till tomorrow at 1 to pay us. And I said, what?
We're going to find out what.
I said, okay. I hung up the phone, picked it back up, and called Delta and got a one-way ticket to Vegas.
He did. That's crazy.
My sword has shattered the sky.
That's crazy. He had to run.
Dana moves back to Vegas, where he reconnects with Lorenzo Fertitta.
And at the time,
It could have been the best thing for him.
Athletic Commission. So we obviously had some common interests.
And we started taking jiu-jitsu. Through that, we started to meet a lot of the fighters, and we were blown away by these guys. I started to represent and manage Chuck the Iceman Liddell and Tito Ortiz. And I got into this huge contract battle over Tito's contract with the old owner.
That's how Dana ends up sitting at a table with Bob Merowitz.
We got in this contract battle over Tito Ortiz's contract. I was talking about pay-per-view, and he flipped out. He says, there is no pay-per-view. There's no money. And he freaks out, and I was like, holy shit, this thing's in trouble. They were going bankrupt. We hung up. I called Frank and Lorenzo.
So Lorenzo, I just heard that the UFC is going to be sold.
These guys are in big trouble. They're losing money. I think we can buy it.
So I called Bob, literally cold called him, and he was looking for somebody to put up $1 million for 50% of the company. I ended up calling back and just said, look, we'd be interested in doing the deal, but we want to buy the whole thing.
And a month later, we own the company.
So the Fertitta brothers create a parent company that owns the UFC. They call it Zuffa,
LLC.
which means to fight in Italian. Zuffa's very first employee is Dana White.
They made me the president of the company, and they gave me 10%. My office was a broom closet with a telephone when we started this thing. Everybody they had, all these smart guys and all these geniuses that came from Harvard and everywhere else, hated this thing.
Do you agree with Dana that MMA will one day be the biggest sport in the whole world?
I do. I really do. And I know that sounds crazy.
You want to be bigger than the NFL. That's going to be hard.
Well, not on a global basis.
The NFL. There's nothing bigger than the NFL. It's huge.
And yet, NFL Europe failed twice.
In India, cricket's huge. I don't know about you, but I don't give a shit about cricket. Soccer is big all over the world. It's not that big here. And the list goes on and on of sports that work in other countries and don't work in other countries. The one thing that I believe would work everywhere is fighting.
I don't
Yeah.
care what color you are, what country
You
you come
understand
from,
it.
what language you speak. Fighting is in our DNA. We get it and we like it. We're human beings.
The challenges that Dana had to take on to pull the UFC out of its misery would be seen by many as impossible.
People think I swear a lot now. You should have heard me the first 3 years of this company.
First of all, when they bought the UFC, all they got for $2 million was pretty much just a logo.
You bought the name and a
Old wooden octagon.
for $2 million.
Yeah, and I think we had like 11 guys under contract. He had sold everything off. The DVD rights, all the old library, the video game rights, the merchandise rights, all the things that you need to build a brand were gone. We didn't even own UFC.com. UFC.com used to be user-friendly computers.
He's dealing with a sport that is banned
User-friendly
on TV,
computers,
banned in
that's
most
crazy.
states, and banned internationally.
Venues did not want the UFC.
This wasn't allowed on pay-per-view. Porn is on pay-per-view.
Our goal was to buy it and get it on free television. People thought that that was insane.
UFC stars like Ken Shamrock or Mark Coleman are gone, either to wrestling or to Japan, where the UFC's biggest competitor, Pride FC, is killing it.
The only two companies in this world that matter are the UFC and Pride.
In 2001, Pride was already filling up stadiums.
Wow,
in
it's
Japan, a
filling
country
up
culturally
big stadiums
much more
too.
accepting of mixed martial arts.
That-
they have the best
Looks like
fighters
that
in
might
the
have been
world,
Alistair
including
Overeem.
the American ones.
And make no mistake about it, the UFC is coming here to kick your ass.
Hey guys, if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
I don't know if Pat really said that, but if he did, he has to be the dumbest motherfucker on the planet. I mean, you know how fucking stupid you have to be
I'm right here, Dana.
to even think something like that, let alone say it publicly and act like you're fucking serious. Pat really said that? It's
What?
Holy shit. We might have to send him out to the clinic here, the brain clinic, get him checked out.
Check me out all you want. I feel fantastic thanks to AG1, the sponsor of today's video. Now,
Every day when I came in here, it was war. And that's literally what I did. I'd stand yell on the phone, F you, F you.
Dana, congratulations on your first show. That's got to feel good. Thank you very much, James.
You know what I did? I went to the bookstore and I bought books on marketing. I bought books on finance. I bought books on PR. That was how I learned.
You have to understand what my job is. What my job is, in this day and age, I have to convince you to stay home on Saturday when you've been busting your ass at school all week, working, all the other things you got to do. You probably want to go out and meet some girls or take your girl out to dinner or go to a movie. I have to convince you to stay home on Saturday and pay $55 to watch my event.
Dana's #1 priority is to legitimize and clean up the brand so it's perceived as an actual sport.
We want to make this.
You got to be good to make you want to do that.
So we did the exact opposite. We ran toward regulation.
The UFC starts by adopting a set of unified rules, which give legitimacy to the sport and ammunition when negotiating with athletic commissions.
And we met with California, Nevada, New York, New Jersey, and the list goes on and on.
And we went to these state athletic commissions and said, this is a real sport. These guys are real athletes. I mean, I had to fly to places and literally had to wait outside people's offices for them to come out and grab them. They didn't want anything to do with the UFC.
What's your superpower there?
That I'm a savage. I get out there and I'll outwork anybody.
But Dana also puts a team on its
Hard worker.
Well, my name is Lawrence.
He got the shit off the ground.
I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. I'm responsible for day-to-day operations of the company.
He also hires the executive director of the Nevada State Athletic Commission, Mark Ratner.
It was a hard decision for me to make, but it's pretty hard to tell Lorenzo and Dana no.
The Senior Vice President of Government and Regulatory Affairs. Did I get that right?
That's exactly right, yes, sir.
And what does that title mean exactly?
It means I go around to states and countries to get the sport of MMA approved and
to make sure that the absolute best fights are put on, Joe Silva and Sean Shelby become the UFC's official matchmakers.
I've been with UFC since about UFC 3, and I just had a good eye for it.
They also scout talent.
If there's a fight on camera, we've probably seen it between the two of us.
And you buy my fight for $55, you better be entertained.
In order to improve the production quality of all the events, the UFC keeps all the TV production in-house.
So then we all had to dive in and learn about production.
They appoint a veteran ESPN producer, Bruce Connell, as lead producer. He also brings into the fold a certain fear factor host.
I'll be interviewing the
Joe
fighters
Rogan.
as they come out of the octagon. Anything we need to know.
It was smart to get a host that was already known.
I would make more money doing a weekend at a comedy club than I would doing the UFC. And I did like 12 of them for free. Like the UFC didn't have any money. And I said, look, just get me there, get me my friends' tickets, and I'll do it.
I'm a huge fan of Ultimate Fighting, all mixed martial arts.
The ridiculous amount of money that goes into fueling all those efforts start to take their toll on the Fertitta brothers.
We were burning cash. We ended up burning like $44 million. And this thing really isn't getting any traction yet. Lorenzo called me one day. I was in my office, and he's like, when do we pull the plug on this thing? Is this thing going to work? I can't keep doing this to my family and blowing all my family's money on this thing, man. Get out there and see what you can sell this thing for. And I was like, I called him back at the end of the day, and I said, maybe we can get $5 or $6 million for this thing.
Lorenzo calls you the next day and it essentially says, F it.
He literally said,
okay, so he literally says, F it.
Fuck it. Let's keep going.
The UFC throws a Hail Mary attempt and takes a page out of professional wrestling.
I've told people for years, I've worked for the UFC for like 8 years now, the only reason why professional wrestling does big buy rates on pay-per-view is because they have a weekly television show that acts like an infomercial for it.
We said, we need to come up with a reality show. Literally, me and my team went into my office.
So the Ultimate Fighter, the series, is what saved the UFC.
Concepts around, and that's the one we came up with. So all these guys live in a house. For those of you that don't know, they're coached by two big stars in the UFC. Every time you fight and you lose, you get eliminated.
It's about, do you want to be a fighter? Anybody who says they don't, I don't want you here.
And it would end with a finale. Two guys fight in the finale. One guy becomes the Ultimate Fighter and gets a contract with the UFC.
The idea is to use reality TV as a Trojan horse to sneak MMA on cable TV.
But at the end of every episode, there's a live fight. You know what I mean? There was a fight that would be on TV. That was the last $10 million investment the brothers were putting in. This is it. We're going to give this thing a shot. If it works, good. If it doesn't, that's a wrap. It's over. So we're $44 million in the hole. And we're out trying to pitch this thing to television.
We were literally begging everybody to take us on TV. We couldn't find anybody.
They're terrified to put this thing on. That's
I can see why though. Like it could easily bomb if the nation doesn't
we ultimately found,
come together and accept this
calling
thing.
Themselves the Men's Network.
Spike TV. That was a perfect place to put it on too.
We're like, oh, this is perfect for us. The network for men. They can't deny this. We give them the pitch. They couldn't wait to get the out of this meeting.
And they said they wouldn't pay us for the content.
So what we said is, how about if we pay for it and give it to you for free? Oh, they like that idea a lot better. We threw this thing on Spike TV with 0 advertising. And the thing goes like this. Takes off. The ratings were through the roof.
But halfway through the season, the president of Spike gets fired.
They had made all these promises to me and everything else. All dead. So we go through this whole season. It's unbelievably successful, and we honestly didn't know if we were going to have a second season. We go into the finale. We have no deal. Nothing. Kenny Florian fights a guy named Diego Sanchez. They go out there and fight. Diego Sanchez smokes him in like 40 seconds. Terrible. We've got 2 hours of programming to fill, and I'm like, oh my God. This is a nightmare. But the savior, Stephan Bonner and Forrest Griffin. So these two guys come out, light heavyweights, and they put on the sickest fight you have ever seen in your life. And the numbers during the fight went just like this. The place is going crazy. People were stomping their feet, and it sounded like a train was going through the arena. And at the end of the fight, people were chanting, one more round, one more round. We ended up giving both guys a UFC contract that night, which made the place even crazier.
Both of them got one. That must mean that fight was off the chain, like crazy.
Didn't do another deal. We did it. We made it. We were going somewhere. Yeah. We literally got up out of our chairs, walked out into the alley, and cut the deal for season 2. We cut a new deal on a napkin. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's true. If that first season didn't happen, I would not be sitting here right now. It's the craziest story ever. You literally couldn't write this shit.
After that success, the UFC doubles down on Spike TV programming. They create UFC Unleashed, Fight Nights, and Countdowns. Also a video game, UFC Undisputed. In doing so, they develop a self-sustaining feedback loop. Check this out. You can see their strategy has 4 aspects: attract, convert, immerse, and extend. You attract people by airing content for free. Then you convert them to pay-per-view. Finally, you throw more experiences and product their way. It's always about feeding more and more people into that loop So what the UFC ends up needing more than anything is content, and somehow the mob comes to the rescue. In
the
Japan,
mob.
a rumor starts going around that the Japanese mafia,
okay.
the Yakuzas, are involved with Pride FC. They are using the organization to launder money by gambling on fights and fixing them. Once the cable company learned
that's
that,
crazy.
they cut all ties with the organization. Pride FC
I wonder who
goes
snitched.
bankrupt within the span of a year. And guess who buys them? The UFC jumps on the opportunity, acquiring all their fighters and entire library of content in the process. The UFC starts airing free fights the same night that their competitors have pay-per-views. So if you're the average mixed martial arts fan on a Saturday night, would you rather pay to watch a second-tier organization or just watch some of the best UFC and Pride fights for free on TV? That's how the UFC destroys competition.
Crush the competition.
Merging with the UFC.
Yes. UFC has purchased Strikeforce. Is that true?
That is true.
When they buy them out, they get even more content to add to their library, which they can air for free and drive more competition out of business. It's exponential.
We've got a library of 20,000 hours of original content.
Why did you go out and purchase Strikeforce?
We need more fights. We need more fights, more fights.
In 2011, one of Dana's biggest goals comes to fruition.
We ended up doing a huge deal with Fox.
Because this is a really, really big day.
This is what I always wanted. What we have is a lot of content. We needed to get our content out there, and they spread our content across all their platforms.
Fox is the #1 network in the country. And all those people out there that thought I was a lunatic 10 years ago when I said that this was going to be the biggest sport in the world.
Some still do. Some still do.
I know.
Call it a coincidence, but a few months after the Fox deal, ESPN comes after the UFC.
You ever hear of John Skipper?
No.
John Skipper ran ESPN. Hates UFC.
Hates it.
Hates it.
Let's talk about Fox Sports. Okay, so these guys have just launched.
We're happy. We like competition. It's fun.
They release an Outside the Lines piece, which targets UFC's practices, more specifically, fighter pay.
Wow, they went right after the fighter pay. That's still a controversy.
They're dirty. They lie.
But they're with ESPN now. That's what's wild.
Followed by an antitrust lawsuit against
Went from his enemy to his partner.
$1 billion antitrust lawsuit it's currently facing from former UFC fighters.
We filed this case in December of 2014 on behalf of a group of mixed martial arts fighters who fought for the UFC.
The government came after us and called us a monopoly.
I do believe they have a monopoly. I don't know how anyone could think they don't.
The lawsuit claims the UFC, quote, engaged in an illegal scheme to eliminate competition.
I mean, anyone that starts to even be up and coming at all, they buy them out or they drive them out.
That allows it to pay fighters, quote, a fraction of what they would earn in a competitive marketplace.
We're spending, $7-8 million a year trying to defend ourselves from the government as a monopoly.
It works. The government dropped the case. The UFC keeps on expanding.
There was a time when Marshall Zalaznik was one of the most powerful people in the UFC.
What is your job? To find opportunities in the international market outside of the U.S. and Canada.
Fighters are key when it comes to expansion in international markets. They open up the door to the countries. George St. Pierre opens up Canada. Michael Bisping opens up the UK.
We've added about 20 states in the last 3 years. We're everywhere but New York and getting close.
And they've cleaned up their act enormously.
We've done fights in Australia, all throughout Europe.
In Scandinavia, Italy.
We're doing Poland this year.
To do the first event in the Middle East is very, very thrilling.
Wow, they had The Rock, Rihanna, there was all types of superstars. I saw Jesus there. It's wild.
We just put on an event over in Macau. It was the most successful event in the history of Macau. We break the arena records with ticket sales. It's usually us and the Rolling Stones. Abu Dhabi now is a partner. These guys are 10% partners too.
Ireland. Those fans feel like you're neglecting them. What's going on there?
Snap your W-2 and file your taxes 100% free with TurboTax Free Edition. Roughly 37% of taxpayers qualify. 1040 and limited credits only. Get the
Welcome to the UFC, man.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Conor McGregor opens up Europe. He's followed by Ronda Rousey, who starts a female division.
Weili Zhang, our Chinese world champion, when she became a champion, she ignited China.
And finally, after 8 years of negotiations, Mark Ratner gets MMA legalized in the state of New York.
And when I heard the final vote tally, that was the emotional moment for me.
Congratulations on passing the bill.
It was a long time coming. I think this really completes the journey for MMA.
An 8-year gestation period? Was that what that was?
That was exactly right. And so this is the baby, and now we'll have the big coming out party November 12th. The big moment for me was at the Garden when Conor was fighting Eddie, and the excitement, the crowd, the energy. That was the special night.
The Fertittas were ready to get out, and they sat me down and said, we're going to sell this thing, and I didn't believe it was going to happen at all. You know, these are my best friends. We'd done it together, and I went up into a hotel room and didn't come out for a few days.
Wow.
Didn't sleep, didn't eat, and Lorenzo had to come get me out of there. Lorenzo looked at me and he says, dude, I'm done. Be happy for me. And then I got it.
And sold it for?
$4.025 billion.
The transaction was the largest in sports history.
This is the man who buys the UFC, Ari Emanuel.
Okay, these are the same people that like are in charge of Endeavor.
Here's the catch. To be able
TKG,
to buy the
I think.
UFC, Ari Emanuel borrows $1.8 billion. When his company merges with UFC Holdings, UFC takes on $2.3 billion of debt. The interest amounts to $98 million per year.
Our Fox deal is up, and we're probably not going to end up doing another deal with Fox. John Skipper's never, ever going to take the UFC. So we're in a real tough place.
Here's a shocker. New details revealed about the resignation of the former president of ESPN.
John Skipper's cocaine dealer is going to rat him out.
What?
He says he resigned because his drug dealer tried to extort him.
So he has to step down from ESPN right at the time that we're trying to make a TV deal.
So UFC is going to be on ESPN now.
Yeah.
No more Fox.
No more
That's
Fox.
done.
The UFC
Wow.
on ESPN.
We just did
That was a
with
huge
ESPN
deal.
for $1.5 billion. And now the company's worth $7 billion.
The deal requires the UFC to put on 42 events per year in exchange for $750 million. But then 2020 happens.
Was the toughest thing I've ever had to navigate in the history of this company. And if you look at where we came from, that's actually saying something.
Endeavor's revenue plunges by 80%.
Companies start laying off big percentage of the workforce. You did not lay people off.
No.
We're 4 months into the year, and the UFC has only put on 8 fights out of 42.
Dana calls me up. He said, get me an island. I said, what? He said,
Give me an island.
Fight Island. Now, is that a clever name? No. Is it the perfect name? Yes.
I have a really good relationship with the royal family in Abu Dhabi.
You ought to be ashamed of himself. There's still a medical danger here.
Dana's way off here, way wrong.
I wouldn't even tell the media where we were holding events because these scumbags would start calling and trying to get it shut down.
That allowed you to keep your sport on the air when everything else was shut down.
Right. We're supposed to do 43. That year
I bet that led to a lot of
growth.
I bet that led to a lot of like growth, a lot of growth.
Started betting on UFC. When other people weren't playing, our fan base grew 46%. We're now one of the top 4 sports in the United States.
The Big Four has changed.
Exactly. The Big Four has changed.
Yeah, hockey got knocked out.
Impossible since 2001. Nothing is impossible. If you're in business with me, don't tell me no. Nobody in this building ever says no.
If you had one thing that you learned throughout your journey in building the UFC that you could pass along to the next generations, what would that be?
There's a lot of... I tell young people now all the time, I definitely tell my kids, if you are even remotely a savage, you'll run these people over. It's all out there for the taking right now.
I just keep saying that there's no reason to be that mean and cruel to people all the time.
I actually like chaos.
Yeah, you must.
If I don't have it, I'll create it in my own personal way.
I don't believe I've ever brought him up to behave like that.
I'm a savage.
Yeah, I know.
And I was raised by a single mother.
Is there something to that? My mother used to tell me that I was going to be just like my father and not amount to anything.
I would love to see him change, but to have my old Dana back.
For the small group of savages out there, run these kids right over, man. Run them all over.
You still love your son?
Of course I do.
There are 2 sides to every story, and on the other side of this one stand the UFC fighters and the main issue at hand, fighter pay. I covered the topic entirely in this video, so make sure you check it out. It's quite the perspective shift. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.
Alright, y'all. That was Patrick Gavia, America's most savage CEO, Dana White. Yeah, Dana is probably one of the most savage CEOs in America, which probably also makes him one of the most savage CEOs in the world. That man ran off all his competition. He literally aired free content to go against their pay-per-views, so nobody bought their pay-per-views because you could get better quality fights for free. That's genius, absolutely genius. Endeavor Sports is now growing. They just purchased WWE. Like, the fight business is growing. Like, it's crazy how big the UFC is. Like, I'm literally reacting. Look at my background. It's all basketball related because my channel is literally about to be all basketball, and a little itch in me decided to go watch the Israel Adesanya versus Sean Strickland fight. And ever since I seen Sean Strickland pull off that upset, I just been so fascinated with the UFC, and this journey's been crazy. And I gotta give Dana White all the credit because he's the one who got the sport to this place where team sports fans like me are now buying pay-per-views and really enjoying it. This is a great video. Big shout out to Patrick Gavia. Shout out to Dana White and the UFC as well. If you haven't already done so, make sure you guys subscribe to Patrick Gavia. If you guys are liking my channel, make sure you guys subscribe to my channel as well, because you know I really appreciate that support, you guys. Make sure you guys hit that notification bell if you want to be first to see the videos as well, and jab that like button. Like, jab it. Just jab the shit out that like button to send this video to the moon. And as always, you guys be safe. Give it your all in whatever you're doing in life. And I'll see you next time. This is your boy DaVizion, and I'm out. Peace.